The rain was falling hard that Tuesday afternoon when everything in my life changed forever. I was carrying 2 heavy grocery bags, walking back from the store near my house. My arms were tired, but I kept going because I refused to use those shopping carts that old people push around. I was only 67 years old. I was not ready to look like someone who needed help with everything. Before we proceed, thank you for watching Granny's narrative. Please subscribe and tell us where you are watching from in the comment section. The sidewalk was slippery from the rain. I remember thinking about my husband Robert and how much he loved chocolate chip cookies. He had been gone for 3 years now, but I still bought his favorite cookies every week. It made me feel like he was still with me somehow. Then my foot slipped. 1 second I was walking and thinking about Robert. The next second I was on the ground. Pain shot through my right hip like lightning. My groceries went flying everywhere. Apples rolled into the parking lot. The cookies I just bought were crushed under my body. A young man ran over to help me. He looked scared when he saw me lying there. He called an ambulance right away. I kept trying to tell him I was fine, but the pain in my hip was getting worse. I could not move my leg at all. The ambulance ride cost me $300. The hospital bill was even worse. They told me my hip was broken in 2 places. I needed surgery right away. Then another surgery 2 weeks later. Then physical therapy for months. I am Helen Carter. I worked as a bookkeeper for 30 years before I retired. My husband Robert worked at Henderson Manufacturing his whole life. We lived a simple life. We saved money where we could. We never had much, but we always had enough. Now I was stuck in a wheelchair and my savings were disappearing fast. The surgeries cost thousands of dollars. Physical therapy was $200 every session. My Social Security check was only $800 a month. The math was not working out. My house became my prison. Everything important was upstairs. The bedroom, bathroom, Robert's office where he used to work late into the night. I could not climb stairs anymore. I was sleeping on the living room couch every night. I was using a bedpan like a helpless child. My neighbor Mrs. Patterson helped me shower once a week in her bathroom because she had one of those walk-in showers. I felt like my life was over. I was living like this for 4 whole months. Every day was the same. Wake up on the couch. Struggle to do basic things. Feel like a burden to everyone around me. My son Michael came to visit me exactly twice during those 4 months. The first time was 3 days after I got home from the hospital. He stayed for 20 minutes. He told me about his busy job and his kids and their activities. He looked uncomfortable the whole time. He kept checking his phone like he was waiting for an excuse to leave. The second visit was worse. He brought his wife Ashley with him. Ashley spent the entire time looking around my house like she was judging everything. She made comments about how depressing everything looked. She suggested I should get some fresh air and maybe hire someone to help clean up. I wanted to scream at both of them. I wanted to say that I was not choosing to live like this. I wanted to tell them that I needed help. But I kept quiet because I did not want to be that mother who complained and made her son feel guilty. Finally, I could not take it anymore. Called Michael one morning. My voice was shaking when I asked him for help. "Michael," I said, "I need to talk to you about something important." "What is it, Mom?" His voice sounded distant, like he was already thinking about something else. "I cannot manage living here anymore. I need help. I need somewhere to stay just for a little while until I figure things out." The silence on the phone lasted forever. I heard him breathing. I heard someone talking in the background. Then he finally spoke. "Mom, let me talk to Ashley about this. I will call you back soon." That was 18 hours ago. He never called back. So I did something I never thought I would do. I packed a small suitcase with some clothes. Called a taxi. I gave the driver Michael's address. I showed up at my son's house without calling first. If he would not help his own mother, then maybe seeing me sitting in his driveway would remind him what family means. The taxi driver helped me get my wheelchair out of the car. He was a kind man. He did not ask questions when I paid him $40 I could not afford to spend. He just smiled and told me to take care of myself. I sat in my wheelchair looking at Michael's house. It was beautiful. 3-car garage. Perfect green lawn. Big windows. The kind of house that shows everyone you made it in life. My wheelchair felt cheap and broken compared to everything around me. I rolled up to the front door and rang the doorbell. I could hear voices inside. Children laughing. Television playing. Normal family sounds. The kind of life I used to have. Michael opened the door. He was wearing nice clothes. Khakis and a polo shirt that probably cost more than my electric bill. When he saw me sitting there, his face changed. He did not look happy or surprised. He looked annoyed. Like I was a salesperson interrupting his Sunday. What are you doing here? Came to see my family. And to ask for help. You cannot just show up here like this. He looked back over his shoulder nervously. Behind him I could see Ashley standing in the hallway with her arms crossed. She did not look happy to see me either. Called you yesterday, Michael. I left a message. I explained everything. Yeah, and I said I would call you back. This is not how we handle things, Mom. Handle things. Like I was a business problem that needed to be solved. I cannot live in my house anymore. Everything is upstairs and I cannot climb stairs. I just need help. Just for a week or two. Michael stepped outside and closed the door behind him. Like my presence might contaminate his perfect house. Mom, you know how Ashley feels about unexpected changes. We have routines. The kids have schedules. I have things planned. Unexpected changes. That is what I was to him now. Not his mother. Just an unexpected change to their household routine. I helped you buy this house, Michael. The words came out before I could stop them. I regretted saying it immediately, but it was true. That was different, Mom. That was a loan and we paid it back. We gave them $20,000 for their down payment. Robert had taken money out of his retirement fund to help them. They paid back $3,000 and then the payment stopped. We never mentioned it again because it felt awkward to bring up. Of course you did, I said quietly. 'Cause what else could I say? The front door opened again. Ashley appeared. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was perfect. Everything about her screamed that she had her life together. I looked down at my sweatpants and old shirt and felt embarrassed. Helen, she said with a fake smile. What a surprise. Hello, Ashley. Michael tells me you have some challenges with your living situation. Challenges? Like being disabled and broke was just a minor inconvenience. I was hoping I could stay here for a few days while I sort things out. Ashley's smile never changed, but her eyes went cold. Oh honey, I wish we could help. But you know how it is with the children's schedules. Soccer practice. Piano lessons. We barely have time to breathe. I looked at their huge house. All those rooms. All that space. And somehow there was no room for me. Besides, Ashley continued. Our guest room is being renovated. Has been for months. You know how contractors are. I knew she was lying. The guest room was fine. She just did not want me there. Mom, Michael said. Maybe we could help you find a place. There are nice assisted living facilities. Assisted living costs $3,000 a month. I get $800 from Social Security. There are programs, Ashley said. Government assistance. I am sure someone in your situation qualifies for something. Someone in my situation. Burden. A problem for someone else to solve. Look, Michael said. Let me talk to Ashley tonight. Maybe we can work something out. But I could see in his eyes that nothing was going to work out. Ashley had already made up her mind. And Michael always did what Ashley wanted. Do not worry about it, I said. I started backing my wheelchair down the driveway. I will figure something out. Mom, do not be like that. Like what? Realistic. Understand, Michael. Family is complicated. I waited for my taxi at the end of their driveway. Through the window I could see them in their kitchen. Ashley was talking with her hands. Michael was nodding. They were probably discussing their Helen problem and how to make it go away without anyone feeling too guilty. Taxi driver came back. He helped me with my suitcase again. He still did not ask questions. During the ride home I looked out the window at all the nice houses with families inside. I wondered when I became the kind of person that other people wanted to get rid of. That night I lay on my couch staring at the ceiling. I realized something that should have been obvious all along. I was completely alone. My son did not want me. Had no money. Had no options. Had nothing. The next morning I woke up with my mind clear for the first time in months. My hip hurt. My pride was destroyed. My bank account had $237. But I was going to figure this out somehow. I decided to finally go through Robert's office. I had been avoiding it for 3 years. It was too painful to see his things and remember he was gone. But now I needed to organize everything. Maybe there were some papers that could help me. Maybe there was something I missed. His desk was exactly how he left it. His reading glasses. His coffee mug with a stain that never came out. Stacks of papers everywhere. Robert was organized about some things and completely messy about others. I started going through the drawers one by one. The top drawer had old tax returns. Warranty papers for appliances we did not own anymore. Restaurant receipts from years ago. Just typical Robert stuff. The middle drawer was more of the same. Old checkbooks. Expired coupons. Pens that probably did not work anymore. But at the very back of the drawer my fingers touched something different. It was a business card. Heavy expensive paper. Fancy lettering. I pulled it out and read it. Pinnacle Private Banking. Discretionary Wealth Management. Below that was a name. Jonathan Maxwell. Senior Private Banker. I turned the card over. On the back Robert had written something in his handwriting. Account number PMBB 7749 RHC. Emergency access only. Emergency access only. If this was not an emergency I did not know what was. Robert and I always banked at Community First Federal. We had our checking account there. Our savings account. Our mortgage. Everything was at Community First. I had never heard of Pinnacle Private Banking. What kind of account was this? Why did Robert hide it in a drawer? Why did he write emergency access only? The smart thing would have been to call first. Make an appointment. Explain everything over the phone. But after yesterday I was done being smart and polite and reasonable. I was done waiting for people to help me. Called a taxi. Pinnacle Private Banking was on the 32nd floor of the tallest building downtown. The lobby had marble floors and security guards who looked like Secret Service agents. The directory listed investment companies and law firms with impressive names. This was where rich people handled their money. The elevator was the quietest I had ever been in. No music, no advertisements, just polished brass and the smell of expensive cologne. When the doors opened, I walked into a reception area that looked like a luxury hotel. A woman sat at the front desk. She was beautiful and professional. Her smile was friendly but also slightly intimidating. "Good morning. How may I help you?" I held up the business card with shaking hands. "I would like to speak with Jonathan Maxwell, please." "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I have account information." I showed her the card with Robert's handwriting on the back. Her expression changed. She became more focused, more attentive. "One moment, please." She made a phone call. She spoke too quietly for me to hear. Then she hung up and smiled again. "Mr. Maxwell will see you right away. Janet will escort you." A woman appeared and led me down a hallway. We passed offices where people in expensive suits were having serious conversations. We stopped at a corner office with huge windows that showed the entire city. Behind a massive desk sat a man with silver hair. He looked like someone who had seen everything and never panicked. When he saw me, he stood up so fast his chair rolled backward. "Mrs. Carter." He said my name like he had been waiting years to meet me. "Please sit down. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" I was confused by how urgent he seemed. Like meeting me was the most important thing that could happen today. "I'm fine, thank you." I rolled my wheelchair up to his desk. "I found this card among my husband's things. He passed away 3 years ago." Jonathan Maxwell took the card and studied it carefully. Then he looked at me with an expression I could not read. "Mrs. Carter, before we continue, I need to verify your identity. It is standard procedure for accounts of this nature." Accounts of this nature. What did that mean? I handed him my driver's license and social security card. He made copies. He studied them. Then he sat back in his chair and looked at me like he was seeing something amazing. "Mrs. Carter," he said slowly. "You need to see this." He turned his computer screen toward me. I looked at the numbers on the screen. First I thought there was a mistake. Maybe the decimal point was in the wrong place. Maybe there were too many zeros. But as my eyes focused, I realized the numbers were real. Robert Henry Carter. Current balance $47,362,891.42. $47 million. That cannot be right, I whispered. "Mrs. Carter, your husband maintained this account for 22 years. The balance is accurate. $47 million. My Robert. The man who clipped coupons and drove an old car until it fell apart. The man who worried about spending too much on groceries. He had $47 million in a secret bank account." Felt dizzy. The room was spinning. I thought I might pass out. I do not understand. Robert was a bookkeeper. He worked at Henderson Manufacturing for 30 years. We lived paycheck to paycheck. According to our records, Maxwell said. Mr. Carter was much more than a bookkeeper. He was Henderson Manufacturing's primary financial consultant for 2 decades. But more importantly, he was an extraordinarily gifted investor. He pulled out a thick folder full of papers. Documents I had never seen. Investment statements. Corporate partnership agreements. Transaction records going back 20 years. Page after page showing Robert doing things I never knew about. "This started small," Maxwell explained. "Your husband brought us his first investment in 2001. $50,000 he had saved from consulting work. He had an unusual gift for investing. Very conservative in some ways. Incredibly bold in others." I stared at a paper showing Robert's account balance at $200,000 in 2003. He never told me about any consulting work. According to his instructions, "Mrs. Carter, you were not supposed to know about this account unless something happened to him or you faced a genuine emergency." Maxwell paused. He was very specific about that. What kind of emergency? Financial hardship. Medical crisis. Family abandonment. Family abandonment. Robert somehow knew that Michael might turn his back on me. He planned for it. 20 years ago he started planning for the day when I would be alone and desperate. He made specific arrangements, Maxwell continued. A monthly allowance if you needed it. $5,000 transferred to any account you specify. But Mrs. Carter, there is more. I could not handle more. My heart was racing. My hands were shaking. Your husband did not just invest his own money. Over the years he identified and funded several promising business ventures. He owned significant stakes in 3 technology companies, 2 restaurants, a small manufacturing firm, a chain of medical clinics. Robert owned restaurants. Robert owned medical clinics. Nothing made sense anymore. He had an eye for undervalued opportunities, Maxwell said. A gift for spotting entrepreneurs who just needed capital to succeed. His portfolio has been generating approximately $2 million annually in passive income. $2 million a year. While I was clipping coupons and shopping at thrift stores. While I was worrying about every bill. While I was stretching groceries to last the week. Robert was earning $2 million a year. Why did he not tell me? The question came out as barely a whisper. Maxwell leaned back in his chair. According to his notes, Mrs. Carter, your husband believed that money changes people. He did not want it to change your marriage or your relationship with your son. He wanted to live a normal life with a woman he loved, while secretly ensuring you would never have to worry about your future. I thought about all the times I worried about money. All the nights I could not sleep because I was calculating bills. All the stress and anxiety about finances. Robert let me carry that burden while sitting on $47 million. He was protecting you, Maxwell said gently. From the pressure. From the changes money brings to relationships. From people who might want things from you. People like Michael. People who treated me like garbage when they thought I was poor. People who would suddenly become devoted family members if they knew I was wealthy. There is something else you need to know, Maxwell said. He pulled out another document. Your husband left specific instructions about your son. My heart stopped. What kind of instructions? Michael Carter is to receive no information about this account unless you specifically authorize it. Your husband was quite clear about that. He wrote, and I quote, "My son has shown himself to be influenced by money and status. Helen's inheritance is to be protected from his knowledge and his influence until she decides otherwise." Robert had seen it. He saw what I was blind to. That Michael cared more about money than family. That Michael measured my worth by what I could provide instead of who I was. And Robert protected me from that truth until the moment I needed protection most. "What do I do now?" I asked. Maxwell smiled. "Mrs. Carter, you do whatever you want. You have the resources to live any life you choose. The question is, what kind of life do you want to live?" I stared out those huge windows at the city below. I thought about Michael's perfect house and Ashley's fake smile and my empty bank account and my impossible situation. 24 hours ago I was a burden begging for help from my own family. Now I was one of the wealthiest women in the state. And nobody knew it yet. The taxi ride home felt like traveling to a different universe. I kept the folder of documents in my lap. I was afraid if I let go everything would disappear and I would wake up with nothing. But the papers were real. The account was real. $47 million was real. And Robert's lies were real too. By the time I got home I was not just shocked anymore. I was angry. Not at the money. How could I be angry about financial security? But at the lie. Our entire marriage was built on a lie. Every conversation about money. Every budget discussion. Every time I worried about bills. Robert was sitting on a fortune that could have eliminated every worry from our lives. I loved a man I never really knew. Inside my house I spread all the documents across my kitchen table. I really looked at them for the first time. The scope of Robert's secret life was staggering. Not just investments, but partnerships in businesses I never heard him mention. A medical clinic in Tampa called Carter Family Medical Center. A restaurant chain called Helen's Kitchen that served comfort food. Helen's Kitchen. He named a restaurant chain after me and never told me it existed. I found my laptop and started researching. Carter Family Medical Center was thriving. It provided affordable healthcare to low-income families. Helen's Kitchen had 18 locations across Florida and Georgia. They were known for generous portions and prices working families could afford. While I was struggling to pay for my own medical care, there was a clinic with my husband's name providing free services to people in my situation. The irony was unbearable. My phone rang. Michael's name appeared on the screen. "Hello, Michael. Ashley and I talked last night." His voice was careful. "Rehearsed. We want to help, but we need to be realistic about our limitations. Course. We found some programs that might work for your situation. There is a county assistance program for seniors. Some subsidized housing options that might be appropriate." Subsidized housing. Yesterday this would have devastated me. Today it was almost funny. "That is very thoughtful of you, Michael. The thing is, Mom, we cannot solve this problem for you. You need professional help. Social workers. Case managers. People who understand the system. The system. Like I was a problem to be processed through bureaucracy." "You are probably right," I said calmly. "Really?" He sounded surprised. "I mean, I am glad you are being reasonable about this." Reasonable. I was being reasonable by accepting that my son viewed me as someone else's problem. Ashley found a case manager who specializes in elder care transitions. Her name is Sandra Morrison. She can meet with you tomorrow if you are interested. That sounds perfect. Great. I will give you her number. He paused. "Mom, I know this is hard, but you will see. Sometimes these programs work out better than family arrangements. There is less emotional complication. Less emotional complication. Translation: less guilt for him. Less responsibility. Less need to actually help his mother." "You are absolutely right, Michael. Family can be complicated." After he hung up, I sat staring at the documents on my table. $47 million. And my son was arranging for me to meet with social services about subsidized housing. I picked up my phone and called Pinnacle Private Banking. "Jonathan Maxwell's office. This is Helen Carter." I would like to speak with Mr. Maxwell about implementing my husband's monthly allowance arrangement. Of course, Mrs. Carter. Hold one moment. Maxwell came on the line quickly. Mrs. Carter, how can I help you? I would like to set up the $5,000 monthly transfer. And I have some questions about the businesses Robert invested in. Absolutely. I can have the transfer set up within the hour. Just provide your bank routing information. And Mrs. Carter. Your husband would be proud of you. He always said you were stronger than you knew. That evening I ordered Chinese food from the most expensive restaurant in town. I ate it while reading through Robert's investment files. Sweet and sour chicken never tasted so good when you knew you could afford it every night for the rest of your life. My phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. Helen just wanted to follow up on tomorrow's meeting with Sandra Morrison. She will be there at 2 to discuss your options. So glad we could help connect you with appropriate resources. Appropriate resources. Like I was a community problem requiring professional intervention instead of family support. Type back. Thank you so much for your help. This is exactly what I needed. And it was exactly what I needed. Not the meeting with the case manager, but the crystal clear understanding of how my own family really saw me. Or, helpless. Someone else's responsibility. Tomorrow Sandra Morrison would come to assess my situation and recommend assistance programs for seniors in financial distress. She would find a woman in a wheelchair living alone with limited income and no family support. What she would not find was that the woman she was helping was worth $47 million. But first I had some research to do. Because if Robert taught me anything, it was that information is power. And after 43 years of marriage to a man I never really knew, I was finally ready to learn who my husband really was. And maybe I would figure out who I was going to be. Sandra Morrison arrived exactly at 2, carrying a briefcase full of forms. She was younger than I expected. Maybe 45, with graying hair and clothes that looked professional but not expensive. She had the determined smile that social workers perfect after years of dealing with difficult situations. Mrs. Carter, it is wonderful to meet you. Your son spoke very highly of you. I bet he did. He probably described me as a sweet old lady who needed guidance navigating senior services. Please sit down. Would you like some coffee? That would be lovely, thank you. I went to the kitchen, grateful I had hidden all of Robert's financial documents in his office. The kitchen looked exactly like what she expected. Old appliances. A few dishes in the sink. The general look of someone getting by on limited resources. Your son mentioned you have been having some challenges since your accident, Sandra said as I served coffee. The house is not very wheelchair accessible. And the medical bills have been challenging. Sandra nodded while pulling forms from her briefcase. That is unfortunately very common. The good news is there are several programs designed specifically for situations like yours. Situations like mine. If only she knew. I have reviewed your preliminary information and I think you would be an excellent candidate for the county senior housing initiative. It is a wonderful program. Subsidized apartments specifically designed for seniors with mobility challenges. That sounds interesting, I said, playing my role as grateful recipient of government help. The apartments are quite nice actually. All first-floor units. Roll-in showers. Grab bars. Emergency call systems. And the best part is rent is based on income. You would pay approximately 30% of your Social Security benefit. About $240 a month. Yesterday that would have sounded like salvation. Today it sounded like exactly where my son expected me to end up. There is a waiting list, Sandra continued. But I have some connections. I think I could get you moved up, especially given your circumstances. What kind of timeline are we looking at? If everything goes smoothly, maybe 6 to 8 weeks. 6 to 8 weeks of Michael feeling like he solved the Helen problem without actually doing anything. 6 to 8 weeks of him telling people how he found appropriate resources for his mother. That is very helpful. What else would I need to know? Sandra explained the application process in detail. Income verification requirements. Support services available to residents. She was genuinely enthusiastic about the program. I found myself liking her despite the circumstances. There is also a wonderful senior center right next to the complex, she said. activities, meals, transportation services. You would have a real community there. A community of other elderly people whose families decided they needed appropriate resources instead of actual support. Mrs. Carter, can I ask you something personal? Course. Your son seems very concerned about you, but he also seems distant. Is everything okay there? I studied Sandra's face. She obviously dealt with enough family situations to recognize when relatives cared more about appearing helpful than actually helping. Michael has his own family to worry about. I understand I cannot be his first priority. But you are still his mother. Yes, but being someone's mother does not guarantee their devotion, does it? Sandra's expression softened. No, it does not. And I am sorry if that has been your experience. For a moment I almost told her everything. About yesterday's humiliation. About Michael's cold dismissal. About how it felt to realize your own child viewed you as a burden. But Sandra was here to solve problems, not provide therapy. The housing program sounds perfect. What do I need to do to apply? We spent the next hour filling out forms and gathering documents. Sandra was thorough and patient. She explained every section and made sure I understood the process. By the time she left, I had a complete application package and a clear timeline. Mrs. Carter, she said as she packed her briefcase. I want you to know this does not have to be the end of your independence. The senior housing complex has residents in their 80s and 90s living full, active lives. This could be a new beginning. A new beginning. Sandra had no idea how right she was. Just not in the way she imagined. After she left, I sat in my kitchen staring at the application forms. Somewhere in Florida there was a medical clinic named after my family providing free healthcare to people who could not afford it. Somewhere else there were restaurants named after me serving affordable meals to working families. My husband had been quietly building a legacy of helping people while I knew nothing about it. What would Robert think about me hiding in this house pretending to be poor while my own son arranged for me to live in subsidized housing? I went back to Robert's office and looked at his files again. This time I studied the business partnerships more carefully. The medical clinic was not just providing free services. It was profitable enough to expand. Helen's Kitchen was not just feeding people. It was creating jobs and building wealth while serving communities that bigger chains ignored. Robert had not just been hiding money. He had been building something meaningful. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. How did the meeting go with Sandra? Ashley and I are hoping she found some good options for you. I stared at the message, then typed back. Sandra was wonderful. She found exactly what I need. Which was true. Just not in the way Michael would expect. What I needed was not subsidized housing or government assistance, or my son's reluctant help. What I needed was to understand what Robert had really been doing with his secret fortune. And maybe figure out how to continue his work. But first I needed to understand why he kept it secret from me for 22 years. And I had a feeling that understanding that would change everything. The next morning, an unexpected visitor arrived. I was reading through more of Robert's business files when the doorbell rang at 9:30. Through the window I saw a black sedan in my driveway. A woman in an expensive suit stood on my porch. Mrs. Carter, I am Victoria Hayes from Meridian Legal Services. I represent several of your late husband's business interests. Victoria Hayes looked like money. The kind of understated elegance that comes from expensive clothes and confidence. Her silver hair was perfectly styled. Her briefcase probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check. I'm sorry, but I do not understand. What business interest? May I come in? This is a conversation we should have privately. I led her to the living room, curious and nervous. Victoria settled into Robert's old chair with the kind of grace that suggested she was used to being the smartest person in any room. Mrs. Carter, I have been your husband's attorney for 15 years. He retained me specifically to handle the legal aspects of his investment activities and to ensure proper succession planning. Succession planning. Robert was very concerned about what would happen to his various enterprises after his death. He wanted to ensure they continue to serve their intended purposes while also providing for your security. Victoria opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Are you familiar with the Carter Foundation?
Well,
Your husband established it 8 years ago. It is a private foundation that funds community health initiatives, affordable food programs, emergency assistance for families in crisis. Robert created a foundation and never mentioned it. The surprises just kept coming. The foundation currently has assets of approximately $12 million and distributes about $800,000 annually in grants, $800,000 a year in charitable giving. And I had been clipping coupons worrying about grocery money. Mrs. Carter, according to Robert's instructions, you are now the sole trustee of the Carter Foundation. But there is something else you need to know. Victoria's expression grew serious. Your husband was very specific about the timing of this information. I was only to contact you if certain conditions were met. What conditions? Financial distress, family abandonment, or evidence that you were being exploited by relatives. There was that phrase again. Family abandonment. Robert somehow anticipated that Michael would fail me when I needed help most. Robert hired a private investigator to monitor your situation after his death. Victoria continued. Nothing intrusive. Just periodic welfare checks to ensure you were being properly cared for. Someone has been watching me. More like watching out for you. The investigator reports to my office monthly. When you showed up at your son's house 2 days ago asking for help, and were turned away, that triggered the protocols Robert established. My husband had been protecting me from beyond the grave. And I never even knew I needed protection. There is more, Victoria said, pulling out another set of documents. Robert was quite concerned about your son's character. What do you mean? Michael has some significant financial problems, Mrs. Carter. Gambling debts primarily. Our investigator has been tracking his activities for 3 years. The world tilted sideways. Gambling debts. Approximately $400,000 to various creditors. Some of them not particularly patient about repayment. Your son has been managing his cash flow crisis by borrowing against his house and liquidating his retirement accounts. Michael's perfect suburban life was built on debt and desperation. No wonder he could not help me. He was barely keeping his own head above water. But there is something else you need to know, Victoria continued. 2 weeks ago, Michael contacted several attorneys asking about elder competency procedures. My blood ran cold. What kind of procedures? The process for having an elderly relative declared mentally incompetent so their assets can be managed by a family member. The room started spinning. Michael had not been avoiding me because I was inconvenient. He had been planning to have me declared incompetent so he could control whatever money he thought I might have. Of course he does not know about Robert's actual estate, Victoria said. He is assuming you have some modest savings and maybe a small life insurance payout. But Mrs. Carter, if he had succeeded in having you declared incompetent, he could have gained access to everything. Everything. $47 million that Michael would have gambled away to pay his debts. Robert anticipated this possibility, Victoria continued. He left very specific instructions about what to do if Michael ever attempted legal action against you. She handed me a sealed envelope with my name written in Robert's handwriting. What is it? His final message to you, along with a complete plan for protecting yourself and your assets from anyone who might try to exploit you. I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a letter in Robert's careful handwriting. My dearest Helen, if you are reading this, it means the worst has happened. Our son has shown his true character. I hoped I was wrong about Michael, but I prepared for the possibility that I was right. You are about to learn things about me. About our marriage. About Michael that will hurt. I kept secrets from you not because I did not trust you, but because I wanted to give you the chance to love our son without seeing his flaws. I failed as a father, Helen. Somehow I raised a man who sees people as resources instead of relationships. But I will not let him hurt you. Everything I built was for you. The businesses, the investments, the foundation. It is all yours now. Use it wisely. Use it to build the life you deserve. And if Michael comes for you legally, remember this. The trap is already set. He just has not walked into it yet. All my love, Robert. I looked up at Victoria, who was watching me with sympathy and determination. What trap? Victoria smiled. Mrs. Carter, your husband was a very clever man. Would you like to hear his plan? Victoria spread documents across my coffee table like a general planning a military campaign. Each paper was precisely placed. Each detail carefully explained. Slowly I began to understand that my quiet husband had been far more devious than I ever imagined. Robert's strategy was elegant in its simplicity, Victoria said, pointing to a complex legal document. If Michael ever attempted to have you declared incompetent, he would unknowingly trigger a series of automatic financial transfers that would destroy him. What kind of transfers? All of Michael's debts would be consolidated under a loan guarantee that Robert secretly co-signed 3 years ago. The moment any legal challenge to your competency is filed, that guarantee becomes due immediately. I stared at the document. Robert guaranteed Michael's debts without telling him. $412,000 plus interest and penalties. The creditors have been remarkably patient because they know Robert's estate is backing the debt. But if Michael moves against you legally, they will demand full payment within 30 days. The elegance of it was breathtaking. Robert had given Michael enough rope to hang himself, then waited to see if he would use it. But that is not all. Victoria continued, sliding another document toward me. Michael's mortgage, his car loans, his business credit line. They are all tied to financial institutions that Robert invested in. If the debt guarantee is triggered, all of those loans become callable immediately. Meaning Michael would lose everything. His house, his cars, his business. Unless he could come up with approximately $800,000 in cash within 30 days. $800,000. The same amount the Carter Foundation distributed annually to help families in crisis. Robert had made sure Michael would learn exactly what that kind of financial catastrophe felt like. How is this possible? How could Robert arrange all this without Michael knowing? Victoria smiled grimly. Your husband was a financial genius, Mrs. Carter. He understood that people like Michael never read the fine print. They just focus on getting what they want. Every loan Michael took out, every credit line he opened, Robert quietly influenced the terms through his business connections. And if Michael does not challenge my competency, then nothing happens. He continues making his payments, struggling with his debts but keeping his house and his lifestyle. Robert gave him a choice. Leave you alone and keep what he has, or come after you and lose everything. I thought about Michael's perfect suburban palace. Every luxury in that house was built on a foundation that Robert could collapse with a single legal filing. There is something else, Victoria said, pulling out a final document. If Michael does trigger the debt consolidation, there is a provision for you to purchase his house at fair market value. Assuming you want it. Why would I want Michael's house? You would not want the house, Mrs. Carter. But you might want the satisfaction of evicting the son who abandoned his disabled mother, then offering to let him rent it back from you at market rates. The vindictive side of me found that idea deeply satisfying. A side I did not know existed until this week. Robert thought of everything, did he not? He spent 3 years planning this. Every angle, every contingency, every possible scenario. He loved you enough to become someone you would not recognize in order to protect you from someone you spent your life protecting. We sat in silence while I absorbed the full scope of Robert's strategy. My gentle, quiet husband had been running a financial operation that would have impressed military generals. What happens now? Now we wait. According to our investigator, Michael has an appointment with an elder law attorney tomorrow morning. If he proceeds with competency action, we will know within 48 hours. And if he does, then we spring the trap your husband spent 3 years building. Victoria began packing her documents back into her briefcase. Mrs. Carter, I need to ask you something personal. Are you prepared for what this might do to your relationship with Michael? I thought about sitting in that driveway being dismissed like a door-to-door salesperson. I thought about the cold calculation in Ashley's eyes. The way Michael looked at me like I was an inconvenience to be managed. Victoria, I spent 43 years married to a man who loved me enough to build a financial empire while letting me worry about grocery money. I spent 30 years raising a son who would rather see me in subsidized housing than disrupt his perfect family routine. I think it is time I stopped protecting people who would not protect me. Victoria nodded approvingly. Your husband said you were stronger than you knew. I am beginning to see what he meant. After Victoria left, I sat in Robert's office surrounded by evidence of his secret life. I tried to reconcile the man I loved with the strategic mastermind he had apparently been. Every document told a story of careful planning and patient maneuvering. Of a man who saw problems coming years before they arrived and quietly prepared solutions. The medical clinic, the restaurants, the foundation, the traps set for Michael. It was all part of a comprehensive plan to take care of me while protecting me from people who might hurt me, including our own son. My phone rang at 6. Michael's name appeared on the screen. Mom, how are you feeling about everything Sandra discussed yesterday? I'm feeling very optimistic actually. But that is great to hear. Listen, Ashley and I have been talking. We think it might be helpful if we were more involved in your transition planning. More involved. After 3 years of barely visiting and 2 days of treating me like a charity case, Michael suddenly wanted to be involved. What kind of involvement? Well, there are probably financial decisions you will need to make. Bank accounts to close. Assets to liquidate. That kind of thing. We thought it might be easier if we helped manage those details. Assets to liquidate. Michael was already planning how to access whatever money he thought I might have. That is very thoughtful of you, Michael, but I think I can handle my own financial affairs. Mom, with all due respect, you have never been great with money. Remember how Dad always handled the investments and the banking. You might be in over your head trying to manage everything alone. Dad always handled the investments. If only Michael knew what Robert had actually been investing in and how spectacularly successful he had been. I appreciate your concern, but I am managing just fine. Are you sure? Because Ashley knows a really good financial advisor who specializes in helping seniors transition their assets efficiently. Could save you a lot of stress and maybe some money in taxes too. A financial advisor who could help identify exactly what assets existed and maybe recommend that a concerned family member be given power of attorney to ensure proper management. I do not think that is necessary right now, Michael. Okay, but Mom, promise me you will not make any major financial decisions without talking to us first. At your age, it is easy to make mistakes that could cost you everything. My age. As if turning 67 had somehow erased 40 years of managing household finances and making intelligent decisions. I promise I will be very careful with my money, Michael. Which was true. I plan to be extremely careful with my $47 million. Especially when it came to protecting them from my son. The call came at 10:15 the next morning. Victoria Hayes sounded calm and professional, but I could hear satisfaction underneath. Mrs. Carter, it is done. Michael filed a petition for competency evaluation this morning at 9:45. Judge Henderson has scheduled a preliminary hearing for next Friday. My son had pulled the trigger. After everything I did for him, every sacrifice I made, every way I supported his dreams and ambitions, Michael decided to have me declared mentally incompetent so he could control my finances. How long do we have? The debt consolidation notices were sent automatically when the court filing was processed. Michael's creditors have 30 days to demand payment, but most will probably move much faster once they realize what happened. And his mortgage? Callable as of this afternoon. First National Bank will probably contact him within hours. I felt a strange mixture of sadness and anticipation. This was really happening. Robert's 3-year plan was finally in motion. There is something else, Mrs. Carter. Michael apparently told the court he is concerned about your mental state because you have been making erratic financial decisions and talking about money you do not actually have. Erratic financial decisions. He cited your withdrawal of $5,000 from your bank account yesterday as evidence of confused thinking. $5,000. Jonathan Maxwell had processed the first monthly transfer from Robert's account exactly as I requested. To Michael, that must have looked like a desperate woman spending money she did not have. He has no idea what is coming, does he? None whatsoever. Mrs. Carter, there is one more thing. Our investigator reports that Ashley has already contacted 3 estate sale companies about liquidating assets from an elderly relative's home. My stomach clenched. Ashley was already planning to sell my furniture. My belongings. Everything Robert and I accumulated in 43 years of marriage. In her mind, I was already gone. Just a problem solved and assets liquidated. What do you need from me? Nothing right now. Just sit tight and let Robert's plan unfold. But Mrs. Carter, you should prepare yourself. This is going to get ugly very quickly. She was right. By 2 my phone was ringing constantly. Michael called 4 times. Each message more panicked than the last. By the 4th call his voice was shaking. Mom, something crazy is happening with my mortgage. The bank is saying they need to review my loan terms immediately. Can you call me back? This is urgent. I did not call him back. At 4:30 Ashley called. Helen, we need to talk. Michael is having some kind of financial emergency and we think it might be connected to your court situation. Can you meet us tonight? This is really important. I did not call her back either. At 7 my doorbell rang. Through the window I saw Michael's car in my driveway. Both him and Ashley standing on my porch. Michael looked like he had not slept in a week. Ashley's perfect composure had cracked around the edges. I opened the door but did not invite them in. Mom, we need to talk, Michael said immediately. Something has gone wrong with my loans. Every bank, every credit company. They are all demanding immediate payment. They are saying I guaranteed debts I never even heard of. That sounds complicated. It is more than complicated. It is impossible. They are saying Dad co-signed loan guarantees for over $400,000. But that cannot be right, can it? Dad never mentioned anything like that to you, did he? Robert had co-signed those guarantees 3 years ago, knowing exactly what would happen if Michael ever came after me legally. My husband planned this conversation down to the last detail. Your father handled all the financial matters. I rarely knew what he was doing with investments and business arrangements. Ashley stepped forward. Her fake smile nowhere in evidence. Helen, this is serious. If these loan guarantees are real, we could lose everything. The house, cars, everything. I'm sorry to hear that. Sorry to hear that. Ashley's voice rose. Helen, this affects you too. If Michael loses his house, where do you think you are going to live when you cannot take care of yourself anymore? Interesting. 2 days ago I was too much of a burden to stay in their guest room for a week. Today I was part of their long-term housing plan. I think I will manage. Michael was staring at me with growing confusion. Mom, did you hire a lawyer? Because someone filed papers opposing my competency petition and they seem to know a lot about my personal finances. I am represented by Meridian Legal Services. Meridian Legal Services. Mom, those people charge $500 an hour. How are you paying for that kind of legal representation? $500 an hour sounded reasonable for protecting $47 million. Michael had no idea he was asking exactly the wrong questions. I am managing my affairs just fine, Michael. Ashley's patience finally snapped. This is ridiculous. Helen, whatever games you are playing, they need to stop right now. Michael was trying to help you and somehow that triggered some kind of financial nightmare. You need to fix this. I need to fix this. Call your lawyer. Withdraw whatever papers you filed. Let us work together to resolve this situation like adults. Like adults. As if Michael trying to have me declared incompetent was the mature, responsible approach to family problem solving. I do not think that is going to happen. Michael was starting to realize something fundamental had shifted in our relationship. Mom, are you saying you will not help me with this loan situation? I am saying you should have thought about the consequences before you decided to have your disabled mother declared mentally incompetent so you could access her bank accounts. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Both Michael and Ashley stared at me in shock. Probably because they never heard me speak so bluntly about anything. That is not what this was about, Michael said weakly. Really? Then what was it about? It was about protecting you from making bad financial decisions. You are vulnerable, Mom. People could take advantage of you. People could take advantage of me. The irony was so rich it was almost funny. You are right, Michael. People could definitely take advantage of a disabled, elderly woman. It is good that your father planned ahead for that possibility. Ashley was looking between us with growing alarm. What do you mean planned ahead? I smiled at her. The kind of smile I learned from watching her use it on me. I mean that my husband was a very intelligent man who understood exactly what kind of person our son really is. And for the first time in 3 days I closed the door on their stunned faces and left them standing on my porch. Tomorrow they would learn exactly how intelligent Robert had been. The next morning brought the most satisfying phone call of my life. Victoria Hayes sounded positively delighted. "Mrs. Carter, I have wonderful news. First National Bank moved to foreclose on Michael's mortgage at 8 this morning. His car loans are being called due immediately. The gambling debt consolidation notices went out to all creditors last night. How much time does he have? 14 days to bring all accounts current or face immediate asset seizure. The total amount due is approximately $870,000. $870,000 that Michael did not have and could not possibly raise in 2 weeks. Robert's trap had been sprung and it was working exactly as designed. There is more," Victoria continued. "Michael's attorney withdrew from his competency case this morning after discovering the financial conflict of interest. Apparently trying to have someone declared incompetent while owing them almost $1 million creates some ethical complications. The hearing is postponed indefinitely while the court sorts out the financial entanglements. Mrs. Carter, your son's legal case just collapsed completely. I felt satisfaction so profound it was almost spiritual. Michael tried to steal my independence and my dignity. Instead he lost everything. My doorbell rang at 10:30. This time only Michael stood on my porch. He looked like he aged 10 years overnight. His expensive clothes could not hide the fact he was a man who just realized he made a catastrophic mistake. Mom, please can we talk? I opened the door and let him in. Curious to hear what he had to say now that his world was falling apart. I know you are angry, he began, settling onto my couch like a man trying not to disturb a sleeping bomb. And maybe you have a right to be. But Mom, I am losing everything. My house, my business, everything I worked for my entire life. That must be terrifying. It is. And the worst part is I cannot figure out how Dad knew to set up all these financial arrangements. Did he predict this somehow? Did he know I would try to have you declared incompetent? Did he know you would try to have me declared incompetent so you could steal my money? Michael flinched. It was not about stealing anything. I was genuinely worried about you. Were you worried when you would not let me stay in your house for a week? Were you worried when Ashley suggested I should be grateful for government assistance? Or did you only start worrying when you thought there might be money involved? Mom, that is not fair. Fair. I laughed and the sound surprised both of us. Michael, you want to talk about fair? Let me tell you what is fair. I went to Robert's office and returned with one of his financial statements. Michael's eyes widened when he saw the Pinnacle private banking letterhead. Your father left me $47 million, Michael. $47 million. He spent 22 years building a fortune while I worried about grocery bills. And he did it all to protect me from ending up dependent on people who might not have my best interests at heart. Michael stared at the document like it was written in a foreign language. 47 million. That is impossible. Your father was a financial genius. He just hid it very well. I pulled out more statements. More evidence of Robert's secret empire. He also left me control of a medical foundation, restaurant chains, various business partnerships worth millions more. Mom, I had no idea. If I had known. If you had known what? You would have been nice to me. You would have let me stay in your guest room. You would have treated me like family instead of a burden. Michael's face was pale. You do not understand the pressure I have been under. The gambling debts. The financial problems. I was desperate. So you decided to solve your financial problems by stealing from your disabled mother. I was not trying to steal from you. I thought you might have a small insurance payout or some savings you were not managing properly. I was trying to protect you from making mistakes. By having me declared mentally incompetent. Well, I do not know anymore. Michael put his head in his hands. Mom, I am sorry. I know I handled this wrong. But please, you have to help me. I'm going to lose everything. I looked at my son. This man I raised, loved, supported, sacrificed for. I felt absolutely nothing. No anger. No sadness. No maternal instinct to protect him from consequences. Just a calm, clear recognition of who he really was. Michael, your father spent 3 years setting up this situation. Every debt guarantee, every loan term, every financial arrangement was designed to give you a choice. Treat me with respect and keep what you have. Or come after me legally and lose everything. But I did not know that. You did not need to know that. All you needed to do was be a decent son to your mother. That was the only requirement. Michael was crying now. Desperate tears of a man watching his life collapse. Mom, please. I will do anything. I will take care of you. I will move you into our house. I will be the son you deserve. Just help me fix this. Do you know what I am going to do with your father's money, Michael? He looked up hopefully. I am going to expand the medical foundation. I am going to open more restaurants that serve affordable food to working families. I am going to help people who are struggling the way I was struggling. People whose families have abandoned them the way you abandoned me. But what about me? What about you? I am your son. I am your family. I wheeled myself closer and looked directly into his eyes. Michael, yesterday I was your family when I needed help. But today when you need help, I have learned something important from your example. What is that? Family is complicated. I called Victoria Hayes that afternoon and instructed her to proceed with the foreclosure and asset seizure processes. I also asked her to arrange for me to purchase Michael's house at fair market value. Not because I wanted it, but because Robert's plan included one final twist. A week later I had the locks changed and arranged for Michael and Ashley's belongings to be moved to a storage unit. I hired Sandra Morrison, the case manager who tried to help me find subsidized housing. I asked her to help me convert the house into transitional housing for seniors who had been abandoned by their families. The irony was perfect. Michael's dream house would become a sanctuary for elderly people whose children decided they needed appropriate resources instead of family support. 6 months later I sat in my new office at the Carter Foundation reviewing grant applications and planning expansion of Helen's Kitchen restaurants. The foundation now provided emergency assistance to families in crisis, funded free medical care for seniors, operated 3 transitional housing facilities for elderly people who had been abandoned by their families. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. He had been sending messages for months, alternating between apologies, demands, desperate pleas for financial help. This one read, Mom, Ashley left me. I am living in a studio apartment working 2 jobs to pay minimum payments on my debts. I know I made mistakes, but I am your son. Please call me back. I deleted the message without reading it completely, just like I deleted all the others. Because the truth was, I learned something profound about the difference between being someone's mother and being their family. Being someone's mother was an accident of biology. Being their family required love, respect, mutual care. Michael had been my son for 38 years. But he never really been my family. And now, surrounded by people who helped seniors who had been discarded by their relatives, I finally found the family I deserved. The family Robert spent 3 years planning for me to find. I opened my laptop and started writing an email to Jonathan Maxwell about expanding the Carter Foundation's reach to more cities. There were so many people out there struggling like I had struggled. So many elderly people being abandoned by children who saw them as burdens instead of blessings. Robert had given me the resources to help them all. And I was going to make sure his legacy lived on in ways that would have made him proud. My phone rang. An unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Carter. This is Detective James Rodriguez with the County Sheriff's Office. I'm calling about your son Michael. My heart stopped. What happened? Nothing serious, ma'am. But we picked him up last night for disorderly conduct at a casino. He gave us your name and number as his emergency contact. He is asking if you could post bail. It is $5,000. $5,000. The same amount Robert had arranged to transfer to my account every month. The same amount Michael had cited as evidence of my confused thinking when he tried to have me declared incompetent. Detective Rodriguez, I said calmly. I am not posting bail for my son. He is an adult. He made his choices. He can face the consequences. There was a pause on the line. Ma'am, are you sure? He seems pretty desperate. I am absolutely sure, detective. Is there anything else? No, ma'am. Have a good day. I hung up the phone and sat there for a moment. A year ago that call would have destroyed me. I would have rushed to help Michael no matter what he had done. I would have sacrificed anything to save my son from consequences. But that was before I learned what Robert knew all along. That sometimes loving someone means letting them fall. That protection without boundaries creates entitled children instead of responsible adults. That the greatest gift you can give someone is the chance to learn from their mistakes. Robert had protected me by planning ahead. But he also protected me by letting me discover my own strength. He could have told me about the money while he was alive. He could have made life easier. But he knew that easy lives do not build strong people. He let me struggle, let me worry, let me face hardship, all while secretly ensuring I would never be destroyed by it. And in doing so, he gave me something more valuable than $47 million. He gave me the knowledge that I could survive anything. My office door opened. Sandra Morrison walked in with a smile. She had become my right hand in running the transitional housing program. Helen, we just got approved for the 4th location. The City Council voted unanimously to support our proposal. That is wonderful news, Sandra. She sat down across from my desk. You know, when I first met you 6 months ago, I thought I was helping a desperate woman find subsidized housing. I had no idea you were going to end up helping hundreds of people instead. Life is full of surprises, I said. Sometimes the people who look weakest turn out to be the strongest. Speaking of which, she continued, we got another application today from a woman whose situation sounds a lot like yours. Elderly, disabled. Son tried to have her declared incompetent to access her finances. She has nothing. No money. No family support. Nothing. I felt a familiar surge of purpose. Send me her information. I want to meet her personally. After Sandra left, I pulled out the photograph of Robert, the first kept on my desk. It was from our 20th anniversary. We were at a cheap restaurant because that was all we could afford. Or so I thought. Robert was smiling at me with such love in his eyes. You knew all along, did you not? I said to the photograph. You knew Michael would fail me. You knew I would need to discover my own strength. You knew I would use your gift to help others instead of just helping myself. The photograph did not answer. But I felt Robert's presence somehow. In the foundation that bore our name. In the restaurants that fed working families. In the medical clinics that provided free care. In the transitional housing that gave elderly people dignity when their own children would not. Robert had not just given me money. He had given me purpose, mission, the chance to turn pain into something meaningful. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria Hayes. Mrs. Carter, the final paperwork is complete. Michael's house is officially converted to the Carter Family Transitional Housing Facility. Grand opening is scheduled for next month. Thought you would want to know. Smiled. Next month we would open the doors of Michael's dream house to elderly people who had nowhere else to go. People whose children had abandoned them. People who society had decided were no longer valuable. And every single one of them would learn what I learned. That your worth is not determined by who loves you or who abandons you. Your worth is inherent, unchangeable, sacred. I spent the rest of the afternoon working on foundation business. Reviewing grant applications. Approving funding for new medical clinics. Planning expansion of Helen's Kitchen to 3 more cities. Every decision I made helped someone who was struggling the way I had struggled. As the sun set outside my office window, I felt something I had not felt in years. Complete and total peace. Not because my life was easy. Not because I had money. Not because my son had finally learned his lesson. But because I had learned mine. Robert always said I was stronger than I knew. It just took losing everything to discover he was right. It took being abandoned to discover I did not need rescuing. It took being betrayed to discover my own power. I picked up my phone and opened the text messages from Michael. Months of desperate pleas, apologies, demands, each one more pitiful than the last. I read through them all one more time. Then I blocked his number. Not out of anger. Not out of revenge. But out of love. Love for myself. Love for the person I had become. Love for the life Robert had made possible. Michael needed to learn what I learned. That strength comes from facing consequences. That character is built through struggle. That real family shows up when times are hard, not just when times are easy. Maybe someday he would learn those lessons. Maybe someday he would become the man I always hoped he could be. But that was his journey, not mine. My journey was helping others, building something meaningful, honoring Robert's legacy, living a life of purpose instead of a life of pain. I stood up from my desk and looked out at the city lights below. Somewhere in those buildings were people struggling like I had struggled. People wondering if anyone cared. People feeling abandoned and alone. Tomorrow I would help some of them. And the day after that I would help more. And day by day, person by person, I would turn Robert's secret fortune into something that changed lives. That was what Robert wanted all along. Not just to protect me, but to empower me. To give me the resources to become the person I was always meant to be. And as I stood there watching the city below, I made a promise. To Robert, to myself, to everyone who would benefit from the Carter Foundation. I would never forget what it felt like to have nothing. I would never forget what it felt like to be abandoned. I would never forget what it felt like to discover strength I did not know I had. Those memories would guide every decision I made, every person I helped, every life I touched, because in the end that is what family really means. Not biology, not obligation, not expectation, but showing up, caring deeply, making sacrifices, being there when times are hard. Michael was my son, but the people I was helping now, they were my family, and I was finally home. Thanks for listening. Do not forget to subscribe and share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.